Welcome back. Oil prices are fractionally higher this morning. OPEC Plus, a surprise oil production cut, sent shockwaves for oil prices. Brent and crude both on the rise this morning, even if just fractionally. Joining me right now is American Petroleum Institute President and CEO Mike Sommers. Mike, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for being here. What's your take on the supply-demand situation? We're looking at oil at around $80 a barrel. Of course, having traded up on these cuts from the Saudis.
Well, I do think the Saudis and OPEC are very concerned about what the economic forecast looks like for the rest of the year. I think there are a lot of concerns about a coming recession and what that is going to mean for oil prices. But the demand is being filled. I think what we're seeing right now in the marketplace is that other countries are stepping up to fill the demand that continues to exist. If there's an economic lesson here, the world is going to continue to consume a lot of oil and gas into the future. In fact, the United States Energy Information Agency just said that even in 2050, most of our energy is still going to be coming from oil and gas. We believe that oil and gas should be coming from the United States, which is why we've been pushing the administration to open up more of our resources for development, for oil and gas development here in the United States.
Yeah, well, look, the Biden administration has a priority of the climate change agenda, so I'm not sure how much movement you'll see on that. But you mentioned these other smaller countries, these oil-producing countries such as Nigeria, Brazil. They've boosted their global supplies. Is that undermining the Saudi and OPEC Plus cuts?
Well, you know, the United States as well has continued to increase our production. We've increased production by about 1 million barrels a day just in the last year. Again, EIA expects that number is going to continue to increase. I'll tell you what is really thwarting American production right now, though, is these continued policies that we continue to see out of the Biden administration, which is restricting American supply. But we're also dealing with some of the same issues that the rest of the economy is dealing with. We're having trouble finding workers right now during this period. And we need more workers. We need more supply of American oil and gas. We need more permitting on federal lands and in federal waters. You know, right now, it took an act of Congress to ensure that we got more permitting in the Gulf of Mexico, for example. That shouldn't be how it is. The administration needs to put out a new 5-year plan, particularly for the Gulf of Mexico, which will increase supply of this important resource in American waters.
Yeah, but Mike, will they? I mean, let's face it, the Republicans made energy and permitting their #1 most important bill. H.R. 1 is their energy legislation, and the Biden administration's vetoing it.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, but we were encouraged by the fact that the Biden administration did open up the Willow Project in Alaska. That work on that project has already started. So when we want to get moving on something, we can get moving on it. We just need an administration that's more supportive of this industry. H.R. 1 is one way that we think we could get this country moving again from an energy perspective. We need to get that to the president's desk as quickly as possible. And let's start having a real discussion about what our energy policy should be. And that, Maria, is going to start with this administration acknowledging energy reality. The world is going to continue to consume these products. Americans are going to continue to demand these products. They're going to use them in their everyday goods, of course, but also to power their cars and to heat their homes. So the real question is not whether or not we're going to be using oil and gas, but whether we're going to be getting it from the United States, which produces it in the most environmentally responsible way.
Well, the one policy on energy that we've seen out of this administration is selling oil from the strategic reserve. And they've gotten the reserves down to dangerously low levels. We've talked about this before. We're at levels not seen since the 1980s. So what about that? Is that why we're buying or trying to see more oil drilled so that strategic reserve can actually get filled up again? How do you assess the reserve right now?
We are at the lowest levels that we've had in the reserve since 1983. But here's the really scary statistic. We're using 20% more oil today than we used in 1983. Oh. So we need to get that reserve filled back up in case there's a real international crisis. And with as volatile as the world is right now, we know that there could be a crisis right on the horizon. Unfortunately, the Biden administration actually signaled that they were going to buy more oil into the reserve at about $70, and then they didn't. And that was one of the reasons why OPEC responded by cutting production in those countries. So these markets are very much interconnected. And we need to continue to produce here in the United States to allow us to have the energy that we need and to provide that energy to the American people.
Yeah.
One interesting statistic, Maria, is that China is actually, imports about 75% of their oil. We want them to be not to be dependent on the United States for these products and other countries. But if we're going to do that, we also need to make sure that we're producing here in the United States.
Yeah, for sure. Well, a new report finds that President Biden's green energy push for electric vehicles could increase reliance on Chinese materials and endanger U.S. national security, Mike. So it's all connected here with this climate change agenda. Not only are we putting the U.S. at a disadvantage in terms of drilling, we're also giving all the business to China. Batteries, all of this other clean energy components are made in China.
That's exactly right. In fact, some of those prime components like lithium and cobalt and nickel, the primary supplier of those is China. That's what you need to produce electric vehicles. We, of course, support efforts to lower emissions, but we cannot sacrifice American energy independence. And doing this the way that they're doing it, which is really just to focus on tailpipe emissions rather than the emissions that actually exist when you create a vehicle from the very beginning. These electric vehicles, while great technology, most of those key components continue to be made in China. And we shouldn't just be looking at this from the perspective of emissions, but we should also be looking at it from a national security perspective. We should not be sacrificing American energy independence to a regime that is certainly hostile to American interests.
One of the most important national security risks. Mike, it's great to get your take. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Maria.